Hello, my name is Brody McGowan of the FortheFansPodcast, and today we are here with our new special guest, James Pyndus. James Pyndus in the past has actually worked on a little bit of camera work for us in the past, so I assume that he'll understand a little bit of the ropes here. He's finally able to join us as a special guest, which is something that I just have to be honest, I am super excited to have this man on here, as we finally get to talk about the Los Angeles Clippers, which I feel like the Clippers are an exciting team to talk about because they made all those free agency moves, but we will get into that as we move on here today, and we will discuss the overall repercussions of what this team has done throughout the last 5 years as a whole. So, James, how did you really become a Clippers fan in the first place? Because you literally live right next to me, so That's not very close to Los Angeles. And on top of that, most people who just decide to hop on an LA team bandwagon, decide to go follow the Lakers. So the Clippers especially is just kind of interesting.
Well, there's a few reasons. Like, Brody was a Lakers fan. Our other friend was a Warriors fan. All California. And then also my dad's friend worked closely with Blake Griffin at the time. And this is when Lob City was a big deal. So I thought they were an exciting team. So that's really why I picked them.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like I can definitely relate to that, as sometimes you just fall in love with a certain player in an area in which they're playing really, really well at the time. So you're like, I love that team. But also the California connections between the three of us, just picking the three random teams in California. I mean, it should be mentioned that me and Harry got championships out of that, even though I did decide to go off the going to become an Indiana Pacers fan. It should be mentioned, me and Harry, of course, I got 2020, and Harry got the 17 other championships that came with deciding to become a Warriors fan before Steph Curry was good. But I guess let's talk a little bit about the whole Clippers thing. So the Clippers are a team that I feel like in the past, it's kind of just been a whole bunch of playoff failures. So, James, I feel like you kind of start with that 2017 team where they maybe were not the most talented team. And that could certainly be said. Montrezl Harrell has kind of struggled to stay in the league, and Lou Williams has gotten older, and he's kind of more of a six-man than a star player, in my eyes. Yeah. And then, of course, there's also Patrick Beverley, who,
Yeah.
You love him. You love Patrick Beverley if Patrick Beverley's on your team. Yeah, you hate him if he's not. That's kind of how I view Patrick Beverley. But I feel like you start off with that season where it's you're kind of just dealing with the whole, the team's maybe not that talented.
They need a star. They didn't have a star player on that team.
Yeah. But
they still did good, though.
You pushed Golden State, of all teams, to 6 games.
Yeah.
And then at that point, people were like, maybe they'll get to Durant in that offseason or whatever. You didn't land Durant.
No.
Of course you did not, because we would be talking differently if you did. But you did land Kawhi Leonard. And
especially after the Toronto season that year.
I initially thought that he would go back to Toronto. Or go to the Lakers and just literally ruin the entire league for 5 years. But he decided to go to the Clippers. And I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Because it kind of created the whole crosstown rivalry, which I thought was good for the game of basketball because it gave it a lot of hype. Even though the Clippers kind of came up on the short end of that stick eventually. But it gave it the whole crosstown rivalry, Lakers-Clippers. It's better that the Lakers had that team to go through in the Clippers in 2020, or they were supposed to have that team. We will go into that. But it's better that the Lakers had that team versus just everybody being like, Kawhi goes to the Lakers and killed everybody for 7 years. Nobody would have wanted that. I think that I can just take it. I mean, you can speak as a Clippers fan and just say,
definitely.
Nobody wants that. So, Kawhi ends up going there, and then the next season, you go in and, it's a little bit higher. And then you had that whole bubble meltdown. Is there anything that you would say about that?
I don't know. I mean, I liked it, honestly. I thought it was really cool how everything happened.
But you like the bubble meltdown against Denver?
Well, no. All right.
I was gonna say.
I like the bubble season a lot, but it just didn't end too well for the Clippers, especially because they did not have a good run against Dallas either. Like, 7-game series in the first round where they should have won in, like, everyone thought, like, 5 or 6. And then after losing a 3-1 lead to the Nuggets, I mean...
I felt like at that season, it should have been the time in which Doc Rivers got fired. Which luckily they eventually did let go of Doc Rivers. But we will talk about him later. But yeah, no, I think you can agree that was just not really...
No, it was...
That was one of the most embarrassing losses in team history.
Definitely.
Especially the Game 7, where it was just like...
Oh, that was horrible.
Where it was just like... Literally, Paul George got like 75 nicknames from that game alone. But, you know, I guess like... Your whole thought then is you're going to come back and, you know, just run it back pretty much.
Mm.
Because it's still a really good team. Like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are, you know, it's still a good team. It's still one of the best teams in the NBA. You pretty much just run that back and hope that things go better.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that case, you had the next year where, you know, it also didn't end well, but it ended,
better.
But it was a lot better.
It was like their best season.
It was the best season in team history where you made the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah,
without Kawhi Leonard, who they beat somebody, they beat up on somebody in the first round.
Dallas.
It was Dallas.
Yeah.
They beat up on Dallas.
Averaged like 40 a game.
They beat up on Dallas in the first round. Thank you for reminding me that. They played Utah, and they didn't beat up on Utah, but Utah blew a 3-1 lead.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can talk about whatever is now going on in Utah, but back then you're just going to have the discussion, Utah blows a 3-1 lead. And in that 7-game series, I mean, straight up, when Game 7 came around, Utah's lack of perimeter defense was straight up exposed by the Clippers, and it led to Terrence Mann having a 40-point game and everyone in Salt Lake City not having a good time. But that is kind of regardless. So, when you talk about that game, I just feel like, do you remember that game in particular?
Yes, because I loved Terrence Mann, and then all of a sudden he was like going off. I was in Hawaii, I remember it well. It was like afternoon, and I was like at the bar watching Terrence Mann like go off on Utah.
Yeah, no, it's funny because we have a lot of people on here. Teams are just rival fans with each other. So we had Ryan on in season 1. By the way, this is season 2, so welcome to season 2. But we had Ryan Oldfield, of course, on in season 1, and we have James on in season 2. Might be some conflicting feelings there, but I guess we just kind of go with that. But I would say that, yeah, so, I mean, yes, they made the Western Conference Finals, and you could debate that if Kawhi Leonard does not get injured in that Utah series, that Los Angeles Clippers go all the way. Sorry, Ryan, Utah is not going all the way. Not anytime soon. Yeah, y'all just traded Rudy Gobert. You guys are rebuilding. But
Unfortunately.
I feel like it's kind of a fortunate thing, but
that team wasn't going anywhere anyway.
Yeah. They got 4 firsts for Rudy?
Yeah, that trade was crazy.
Oh my god. You're talking just like, I guess we're just going to talk Utah a little bit now, but you got 4 firsts for Rudy Gobert? I literally thought Rudy Gobert was going to net PJ Washington in a first. Like, I'm not even kidding. I'm sorry to say it. I literally thought that was Rudy Gobert's value. Like, I thought it was PJ Washington in a first-round pick to Charlotte. And I thought the Utah would accept that because they'd have nothing better.
Yeah.
And maybe not PJ Washington, just like some player of his caliber. Like maybe Miles Turner. Somebody of that caliber. Think like, you know, like your mid player, not even an all-star. Just because of Rudy Gobert's contract. But yeah, he went for 4 first-round picks to Minnesota. I mean, I think we could all just agree.
Yeah,
that really good job by the Jazz.
Yeah, no.
But we'll move on from talking about Utah because this is the Clippers. So you kind of, you go through that whole little thing with,
Mhm.
you beat up on Utah, but then Kawhi Leonard gets hurt, and you eventually fall to Phoenix, who falls to Milwaukee in the championship. Do you have, regret about that season when it comes to, thinking that that the Clippers, may have won the championship?
Yeah. It just annoys me because Kawhi was playing so good too. He was playing so well, and Paul George was playing well too. It wasn't like the year before. Like they were all playing so well as a team, and then all of a sudden it all fell apart. But they still did pretty good against Phoenix, even with just Paul George and the rest of their team.
Yeah, it was just kind of clear that they were outmanned in that.
Yeah, definitely. They didn't have
where it was you have Paul and Booker and Ayton.
They needed more they needed just another guy on both ends, honestly.
Oh yeah, I can totally agree, and that's where Kawhi Leonard is supposed to come.
The defense was falling apart. I remember it all. Yeah,
that's where Kawhi Leonard's supposed to come. But I guess that just did not happen. And then the next year, which of course was last season, Kawhi Leonard was still rehabbing from the Utah injury, from the injury in the game against Utah. You're kind of just not expected to do much. And you almost did make the playoffs, but Paul George decided to just get COVID in the what's it called? In the
play-in.
In the play-in.
Yeah.
And I think if Paul George doesn't get COVID in the play-in, Clippers probably make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So they're probably an 8th seed, but
you
get there. Yeah, I don't think they would have gone anywhere. I don't think Phoenix was going to choke anybody.
No.
Until they did.
Yeah, Golden State was going to lose to anyone.
It would have been, no.
It would have been the same thing, so I'm not too upset at that. I'm just, mad that they didn't make the playoffs. Just that's annoying.
You feel like that would have been a positive step?
Yeah, just, being, a solidified, playoff team every year for, a while, too. And then that just all going away. So it's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But, Golden State last year, they didn't make the playoffs, right? So then.
Yeah, Golden State didn't make. Golden State was one of the worst teams.
Anyone last year. Yeah, remember they were last in the West. So.
They weren't last, but they were bottom 5 or something.
Down there.
Yeah, but so now that kind of brings us to our current day situation for the Clippers, which is they're once again gonna go at it with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Once again. Pretty much exactly what they did last year. However, they have done a couple of good things and down a couple of guys who have really helped them out, who they brought in this season. One of those, probably the biggest name, not sure if it's going to be the biggest value, is John Wall.
Yeah.
What do you think about John?
I'm really happy with it. I feel like he's if he doesn't get hurt, he could be a great starting point guard, which we need another point guard. We had Reggie Jackson, and we had Eric Bledsoe, but last year that really didn't go anywhere. And if he doesn't get hurt, he could put up 18 to 20 a game, 7 assists, and he would be a really good point guard. I think he would be a good starting point guard. Reggie Jackson coming off 6-man, and it gives us so much more depth too. Reggie Jackson, who's averaging 19 points a game as a 6-man.
The issue with John Wall has always been the shooting and the efficiency.
Yeah.
But I feel like if he's willing to go down and play that third, maybe even 4th role in order to win a championship, he certainly will give you depth. And depth is something in basketball that you can't speak enough about. Having enough guys to the extent that if Reggie Jackson goes down, you have John Wall. If John Wall goes down, you have Reggie Jackson. It's kind of the best of both worlds, in my eyes. So getting another name in there. Whether or not John Wall was, for starters, I don't think he's ever returning to his Washington.
No, definitely not.
That's just, I think, so far out of the conversation.
Yeah.
And he was good. He was pretty good for Washington. But I don't think he's ever getting back there. When he was in Houston, the issue was he was just given a lot of shots to take. But then the team was losing a lot of games. So, again, it was not a good team. That Rockets.
Yeah.
He never, played with James Harden or anything Or if he did, it was for like 4 games. Like, he was
Yeah.
like, get me out of here and being all fat. But I feel like you're kind of just discussing with John Wall. Like, can he take that step where it's like, okay, now he's like, okay, I'm going to be a role player.
Yeah,
And
he can't be that. He's not good enough to be like the best anymore.
yeah,
That team's not going to go anywhere. Like the Rockets is a good example.
yeah. I feel like with him, it's just kind of like, can he settle into his role, play his role well, attack the basket when need be, and then, I don't know, make open shots? Because that's kind of always been a little bit of a weakness, at least when it comes to the making open shots part. But I feel like he could be a really good guy, especially if they just want to play him as a 6-man and then just run the offense through him off the bench. Then you're talking somebody who it's like, yeah, he can go get you a bucket if you need him to get him a bucket, especially against bench players. Which is why I really did like the John Wall move. The next one is Amir Coffey.
I love Amir Coffey. He's still so young, and like he's such a good role player, and he improved so much last year. And I think I'm actually really happy with him, and I want to keep him on the team for a while. I don't think he'll be anything great. I don't think he'll ever be an all-star or anything. But he like started some games last year. I think he'd be a good 7th, 8th man for the Clippers. And if anyone's hurt, he could like step in and put up some good numbers. So
That's always a good thing to have on a team, especially when you find those homegrown guys who it's like, okay, nobody really expected Amir Coffey to be great, but the fact that he's playing really well in the minutes that he's been given, it kind of turns him into a cult favorite, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Could you agree with that?
Yeah.
I feel like every single franchise has a cult favorite player. Some of them are just not well known. For the Clippers, it's either Amir Coffey or Terrence Mann. But like for the Lakers, it's Austin Reeves. The Pacers, we still cheer for Lance Stevenson every single time he comes into the building. For some reason. Mostly because Lance is the GOAT.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's just kind of that. And then the next guy is Nick Batum. Nick Batum's a guy who used to be on that ridiculous contract. And it was just like, why did Charlotte ever sign him to that deal? Like, I mean, we get it. Michael Jordan is incompetent as a GM. But that might be one of Michael Jordan's worst moves as a GM.
Yeah.
And Michael Jordan is not a good GM. I think that we know that. Michael Jordan's a great basketball player. Not a great GM. But now I feel like he's kind of fitting into a role with the Clippers.
Yeah, I think he is. And now he's not like the max contract with him. Like that everyone thought he was so bad in that era where he was like being paid that much because he was being paid way too much. Now that he's not being paid as much and he's not like as valued, I guess, he was like exceeding my expectations.
I feel like that's definitely a big thing with players, and it's like the average fan of a sports team will take a player's contract into extent of how good of a player they are. A player having a bad contract impacts their trade value, yes, to like other teams. Which going back is why I thought Rudy Gobert's $55 million, whatever the hell he's being paid, is what would have impacted his trade value. Does that make him a worse player? No. Does Nick Batum making $120 million a year make him a worse player? No. It just means that maybe he's better suited in a different role. And on the Clippers, he's proven that now on this smaller deal that he can definitely be a valued 3-and-D member who you know, he can guard another team's best wing in the playoffs if you need him to. If you need him to go mess with Michael Porter Jr., he could go get that done.
Yeah.
If you need him to go mess with LeBron, he can get that done. But that's kind of my opinion on Nick Batum and my also general opinion on how people view contracts and basketball. Like Andrew Wiggins, same thing. It was like, Andrew Wiggins is really, really bad.
Yeah.
Just because he's a borderline all-star getting paid money that would symbolize like he's a top 10 player in the league. Like, no, he's not that bad. He's just getting paid more money than he's probably worth on the court. which impacts like that impacts team building, sure. But does that mean that a player is suddenly bad? No. So I guess I'm sticking up for every single overpaid NBA player right now. Shout out Chandler Parsons.
Yeah, that's true.
Shout out Chandler Parsons. Shout out Russell Westbrook right now.
Yeah.
That contract's kind of an albatross. But it's like, oh yeah, and by the way, it should be stated, get your bag. If you're an NBA player, you should never blame a player for signing.
For those guys.
Yeah, exactly. You should never be like, you got too much money. That's on you. No, that's on the front office that signed your player who's not that good to a $70 million game.
Yeah.
It is not on these players who are getting once-in-a-lifetime life-changing money to accept once-in-a-lifetime life-changing money.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could agree with that.
No,
if you'd like to say something about that?
Yeah, if you're offered a max deal and you're Nicholas Batum and on Charlotte who had a good season and now is being offered $200+ million, obviously you're gonna take it, even if you're not the best player, even if you don't deserve it. Why wouldn't you take it? It's gonna change your family's wealth for generations.
Yeah, literally. It's not on the players.
Yeah.
Is it on Michael Jordan for giving him that money?
It's on the team. The players don't pick how much money they're getting paid. It's how much the staff thinks they're worth. How much the team thinks they're worth. So.
Yeah, definitely. And then talking about players who teams have seen a lot of worth in, let's talk about Paul George and that Paul George trade. So Paul George, goes from Indiana to Oklahoma City. And then from Oklahoma City, he gets traded to the Clippers. Is essentially a buy-in. And all that I remember about that deal is it was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Mm-hmm.
And
a bunch of picks.
A lot of picks.
We still don't have picks.
They still have no picks.
And I love Shai so much. He was up and coming. He was playing really good for the Clippers that year too. His rookie season, he had so much potential. I was so sad we gave him up.
But do you regret the Paul George trade?
No. No, not really. Because, if it was just Kawhi, they wouldn't be nearly as good in those years. If it was just Kawhi and not last playoffs, but 2 playoffs ago, 2021, we wouldn't have gone anywhere. Paul George
I also think the thing was Kawhi showed up and said, give me Paul George.
Yeah, that's true. He needs someone else.
He straight up said, I will only come here if you give me Paul George. So you're essentially trading that whole package for Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. You can debate about that logistically because of, just the simple fact that they haven't performed well in the playoffs. However, I don't really think that that's really over, as we will get on to. It's not, yes, they have not been the best in the playoffs, but we will discuss this. It's not like this is over. You're bringing back Kawhi Leonard and Paul George for at least the next 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that, what's your opinion on this current roster as a whole?
I think they need... I love it. They have so much depth. If everyone's healthy, they have, the starters. They have, a great, lineup coming in right after them. They constantly have great players who are, averaging great numbers, too. And the team just seems like they're all, the chemistry's there.
It seems like people are buying in.
Yeah, people love it. Reggie Jackson is a likable player, at least for the Clippers.
I think Reggie
Jackson,
man.
We have so many guys who seem to just love going out there and playing well together, and they give it their all every game. Terrence Mann is running up and down the court every play. He's not the most skilled player in the NBA, but he plays harder than everyone else.
It's kind of that whole LA grit mantra the Clippers now while the Lakers try to be flash and substance, the Clippers try to be more of the gritty team, the down-to-earth team in LA. But I get that. You get a whole bunch of players in there who are not really the best guys, but work their asses off, and it's clear that they defend well, and that there is accountability going on with the Clippers. And then with that, there was also a trade that you guys made a little bit recently, which was the deal with Portland, in which you brought in Robert Covington and Norman Powell. What's your opinion on that deal?
That was a steal for the Clippers. They got two great players. Like Powell is like now the third option on the Clippers. Like Covington's up there, like coming right off the bench every game. And we gave up like Eric Bledsoe, who hasn't been good in a while.
Yeah, I feel like Eric Bledsoe kind of fell off a little bit. I feel like even when he was in Milwaukee, and then it was like somebody else in a second round pick. Yeah. Not really anything. But I feel like, what's his name? Norm Powell could be a legitimate 20-point per game scorer on a team if you need him to be. He brings scoring, he brings defense. Robert Covington's a little bit less scoring, but pretty much the same amount of defense. And I feel like that's what you kind of want to pride yourself on, is perimeter defense and switchability and things of that like. So I genuinely do feel like that trade helps a lot with that.
It helped a lot.
Now you can go in next year with even more depth than you had, because those guys are on contracts where you're going to have them for a while.
Yeah.
So you're going to have this whole team together for a while. So with that, the offseason has kind of pretty much finished up by the time that we were making this video. Are there any other options that you want to talk about when it comes to making this team better? Are you like team... Let me guess, you're no Kevin Durant? No. I'm just going to straight up say it.
No.
He's like the big piece right now that everybody's talking about. I would not be team Kevin Durant if I were them.
No.
It would be like trading Kawhi. Like, you don't have any other option.
Yeah, there's no room for him there. Like, I don't think I would... I mean, like, obviously every team, like, wants Kevin Durant to a certain extent, but, like, there's nowhere for him to, like... I don't think he would ever go to the Clippers. It's just not, like, his kind of team. I mean, I guess it could be, but, like, how are we going to afford him?
It would be trading Kawhi.
Yeah, and I'm not giving up Kawhi for Kevin Durant. I wouldn't do that. Especially, I just feel like Kawhi fits into the Clippers a lot better than Kevin Durant would. And also, I don't know. I guess we could use, like... The only thing we could use is younger people. Yeah. Younger players. Like, our team, we have 5 years max until all those guys are, like, old.
Yeah, no. There's definitely a title window with this team. But we will discuss that in a little bit.
Like, in, like, 6 years, 7 years, the Clippers are starting over, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Rebuilding.
So... That also comes when you go about the Paul George trade. They don't really have a lot of draft picks. Mm-hmm. Does that alarm you?
Yeah, because it shows that we have, like, a time limit, and then it's, like, as soon as these players are done, we're not going to have anyone in a while. It's going to take so long for us to rebuild. We don't have any draft picks. We can't really... We just have to rely on signing more free agents and just shooting for titles, I guess, every year.
Yeah. But the thing with that, I feel like... we never had a Raptor. I think we discussed the Raptors title at 1 year. But what I pretty much said about the Raptors was nothing matters. No draft picks, no anything matters if you win a championship.
Yeah, it's true.
So that's the goal here in Los Angeles. It's called Title Town for a reason. So the goal is to win championships. And if the Clippers do that, I don't think you're going to be stressing out about the 4 first round picks.
I'll be good for a while. If
they... yeah, exactly. If they win the first championship in team history, then you're going to be like, okay, that's fun. I like that. Yeah. And then you're kind you're kind of just going to be fine. Like, do you think the Raptors are regretting the Kawhi Leonard trade?
Nope.
Nobody's losing sleep in the city of Toronto
Yeah.
about the fact that Kawhi Leonard left. So it's really just like, you got to win a championship. But the next thing that I guess that we should discuss is a little bit more about the current roster. Coming into next year, are there any real strengths or weaknesses that you feel like are apparent with this team?
Yeah, the weakness is like injuries, because John Wall is injured every other year. Kawhi Leonard's been injured. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George haven't come season out getting injured at least once in a while. Kawhi Leonard hasn't finished a season in a few years since the Toronto season. He hasn't played a whole season. And that's, like, the biggest concern. But it's, like, a very, like, relevant concern, though. Because there's a big chance that everyone gets hurt. And it all, like, falls apart. And I feel like if everyone gets hurt again, it's going to be, like, does this team really, like, go anywhere ever?
Yeah. Maybe at that point, you're also looking at firing some team doctors and things like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, get out! But
exactly.
Maybe you're looking at firing some team doctors. Because I remember last year when the Steelers were dealing with all the groin injuries, it's just kind of like, shouldn't the entire team not be suffering from the same thing? Imagine the person who thinks that maybe we're practicing wrong or something. But I can certainly agree with that. I feel like the Clippers' other weakness was always a lack of ball movement. Sometimes the offense gets a little bit too isolation heavy.
It's so annoying when, like, one player, even Kawhi, like, he does. Kawhi, Paul George, every player with every, like, ball handler on the team goes down the court, backs them down, shoots, like, a stupid fadeaway. It'll go in, like, 30% of the time, but it's just not worth it, especially at the end of the games. Like,
yeah. I feel like that's another reason why you bring in John Wall.
Yeah.
John Wall has been known to be a very good passer throughout his career. And that's something that I don't think goes away with age and things of that.
I feel like it increases, if anything. Like, they pass him more.
Yeah, even with his injuries, John Wall should be the type of guy who has the NBA knowledge to be who is still an elite passer in my eyes. So, if that is the one skill that I think he does have, still, I would say that bringing in him might help to do more with the offense. Maybe what you're also looking for with the Clippers is something like, maybe like a Rajon Rondo on a minimum.
Yeah. We had him. When did we have him? A year or 2 years ago. He was on the team for a bit.
Yeah.
It's just an experienced guard. Like, all of our guards don't. Reggie Jackson, but
he's kind of more of a bucket guy.
Yeah, and, like, besides him, all of our guards are young.
Yeah.
So we don't really have anyone who's, like, knows what they're doing and where to bring the ball. Like, so I'm really happy with John Wall. I think he'll be good if he stays healthy.
And just as that actually happened, Damian Lillard just signed a 2-year extension.
Oh, really?
Yes, literally, that just went across my phone. Do you want to talk about that? I mean, I think it's just honest. I think like, Blazers, you gotta go after.
They need someone else.
They have the money to get somebody else, though. And they have the assets, too, as well.
Is Kevin Durant looking there at all?
Dame Lillard's trying to recruit him there.
Yeah, no.
If that were to happen, that's the type of team where I'd say, go get KD right now.
Yeah.
Like,
they need that.
Like, those two would be nice.
Hey, maybe that's, like, coming if Dame signed. Because why does he keep signing back with, like...
Well, here's the other thing about Damian Lillard, is that I think that a lot of the reason why he likes being Portland is just because, like, it's not even just basketball.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, he raised his kids there. He has a wife there. Maybe he's just content with...
That city loves him, too.
Yeah, maybe what he's content... Maybe he doesn't want to take his kids out of the school systems because they probably have lived there for the last 10 years and probably gotten friends and, stuff of that like.
Yeah, that's
If you get what I'm kind of saying.
I don't see him really leaving Portland ever.
I'm actually team that as well. Yes, maybe will that mean that he'll just become the greatest Blazer in NBA history? And I don't know. I think he already is the greatest Blazer in NBA history. But
Him or Clyde.
him or Clyde Drexler. Yeah. But I feel like that's kind of an interesting conversation where it comes to like, okay, with him and being loyal to that city. I feel like at this point there has to be other reasons behind what he's doing, whether it's like just family or stuff along those lines, or school or friends, or you know, or just like wanting to build that legacy in Portland.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Damian Lillard, do your extension. Let's move on. So yeah, no, I feel like with the Clippers, let's get back to this. I feel like, yeah, no, you got to talk about how sometimes the offense is too ISO heavy, and hopefully John Wall fixes that.
Yeah.
Because that would be an ideal goal for the Clippers, and that would open up the offense a lot more. I mean, Kawhi Leonard is kind of an okay passer.
No, he's all right. He's not. Some of his passes, he'll have like some great passes. He doesn't. He moves the ball around. He definitely does, but he likes to shoot too.
Yeah,
and he's a big scorer, so we need him for scoring.
Yeah, so. True. He's like him and Paul George are both okay passers. That's not where you really talk about them the most. You're more using them as defenders. Even though I do think Kawhi Leonard is kind of an overrated defender.
Yeah,
if you want to have that conversation. Just because he's kind of entered the LeBron phase of his career, where like we know Kawhi and LeBron are great defenders, but they don't try all the time.
No, Kawhi will have those few crazy he'll have
defensive
a steal, he'll
down
like a crazy block
down the
it'll be the highlight like
down the stretch. He'll have the highlight that you need.
Yeah,
but like he's no longer young Kawhi,
defensive player of the year,
where he would just D you up every single possession, no matter what happens.
He'll D it at the end of the game, of course. Like he'll like
lock in.
Yeah, but
that's exactly what LeBron does. Locks in at the end of games.
Even like Reggie Jackson is just showing more like every defensive trip than Kawhi has been.
Yeah, no, I can. And Pat Bev.
Yeah, Pat Bev. Pat Bev would guard LeBron.
Even though he's gone. Isn't Pat Bev in Utah?
Yeah, he got traded. Yeah, he got traded.
You got to trade back for Pat Bev.
Yeah, I know.
Give up the whole team.
I agree.
Give up the entire team.
He was so good there.
Literally, just call up the Jazz and be like, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Amir Coffey, Marcus Morris, just literally, just literally everybody. Have Pat Bev run the team with 5 G Leaguers.
Yeah.
Come on. Why didn't we think about that? I feel like we should have been thinking about that. Pat Bev and 5 G Leaguers. Pat Bev would carry that team to the playoffs.
I feel like the best team to watch.
He would literally carry that team to the playoffs.
I want to see Pat Bev like be the star of his team. That'd be so funny.
I don't know if that's what I think as an NBA fan, I'm like, heck yes, please make Pat Bev the star of the NBA team. Like, I don't know, free Pat Bev.
Free Pat Bev. Yeah.
Free Pat Bev out of Utah. It's not free Donovan Mitchell, guys. He's gonna stick around. Yeah. It's free Patrick Beverley because that man needs to be freed onto his own team. Just think like, who's the worst team in the league next year? Next year, who would just let Pat Bev take like 45 shots a game? That is all that I need in my life.
Yeah.
I just need Pat Bev needs to drop 80.
Magic. Can you sit around to the Magic?
Pat Bev to the Magic. Just let him shoot every single shot. I literally want him to have like 81 on like 15% efficiency next year. Yeah. And we'll just be like, Pat Bev, 81-point game. They're like, he shot 10% from the field and lost. I'm like, I do not care. So, free Patrick Beverley. I don't know where, but just let him shoot every single shot for an entire season.
I agree. Yeah. He deserves that.
He definitely does. But now let's discuss the next important thing. Do you think that the title window of this team is open?
Yeah.
So you think that they can win the title next year?
I say if they I think they can win. If everyone's healthy for the playoffs, then yeah. And I think that they could beat every team with a fully healthy and like good Clippers team where they're on, everyone's playing good together. If like the ceiling, yeah, definitely. But then also, I would say also if they play good, maybe like lose in a championship or Western Conference Finals, they still have another year or two in them.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. I think that the title window is open. So if you want to talk about ceiling or floor, I think it's pretty honest right now. The ceiling is NBA champions for the Clippers. 1 seed, demolish the Western Conference, NBA champions. That is the ceiling. I think that, James, could you speak anything to that?
No, definitely. Like, they have everything they need to do that. Like, they have every scorer, passer. Like, Robert Covington is, like, the 8th man at this point. Like Terrence Mann. Like, they have everything.
They have the depth.
Yeah.
Hopefully they have the passing. They have the defense.
Mm-hmm.
They have the big men. Ivica Zubac, who we have not mentioned up to this point.
Who is...
And Isaiah Hartenstein is a very good defensive big man combo. You have the defense. You have the scoring in Kawhi and Paul George.
Mm-hmm.
And Reggie Jackson also off the bench. You have pretty much exactly what would stay in an NBA championship team.
Yeah.
That's literally what I would say that you have. You have an NBA title contender. And with that being the case, I think they could be legitimate title contenders next year. They could be the first seed in the conference, sweep through, and you wouldn't even be having any other conversations about it. But
injuries and the Clippers that don't have the best.
Yes.
The best.
Injuries is where the floor kind of jumps in. Let's say John Wall doesn't work out from a passing perspective and he doesn't fix what you're talking about. Kawhi Leonard or Paul George or both get injured and struggle with injuries. Some of the older role guys like Marcus Morris and Nick Batum regress. Then you're maybe talking, I was looking at the standings and I personally was team the floor would be the 10th seed and an out in the first game of the play-in game, the first play-in game. My floor would be that they are out in the first play-in game.
It'd be like this year, but a little worse because it's just
another year.
Yeah, and teams are getting better too, so it's like, so it's another year like this year.
Pretty much.
At that point, trade everyone.
I would not actually. Well, it depends. Is it the actual team that's doing bad? Or is it just like Kawhi and Paul George get hurt again? It's just really like dependent on. Then at that point, you're probably going to just send it back and say, we're going to go get more role players around Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Or different role players. Like, you get rid of John Wall, you're probably getting rid of Morris, you get rid of Batum.
Yeah.
And you go replace them with younger guys.
Yeah.
And that's kind of your ideal goal as if you're the Clippers. So, with that, I would say that that's the end. Is there anything else you would like to say about the ceiling or the floor?
That's it. That's pretty much it. It's pretty, like, I feel like it's going to go one way or the other. I don't think it'll be middle.
It could be middle. Let's say, like, Golden State and Phoenix and Memphis are still really good.
Second round,
and then, and then they're, like, a 4 seed and they get to the second round. I could totally see that happening.
I really feel,
where it's like, they still look like title contenders, but they just don't put it all together in order to win a championship.
But we never, like, seen, one thing, we haven't seen Paul George and Kawhi and, like, they could, outside the first round together. Like, we haven't seen their whole team healthy outside the first round.
I mean, they got a couple games in that Utah series.
They did have a couple games, and they weren't the best games, but...
True.
Still, I don't know, I'm excited. I'm excited for the season. I think it'll be a good season all around.
I think that there's a lot of a reason to be excited for this season. It's a
lot of competition.
For the Clippers, it's a lot of competition, but it's a very good team that they have built over there in LA. And that goes a lot out to Steve Ballmer and the guys who run the organization.
Steve Ballmer. He's been doing good.
He's hilarious.
Yeah.
If you want to have that conversation. Also, we have not mentioned this yet, but Tyron Liu. Would you have anything to say about him?
I think he fits the team well. I think he's good for the team. I think he is the right coach. I don't know. I mean, I'm happy with him. I wouldn't really want anyone else at the moment. Like, I think he's good for the point we're at.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like he's definitely good for the point that you guys are at as a team. Where it's like, I feel like he didn't get the credit with LeBron that, like, he properly deserved for taking those teams and helping with, the 3-1 lead in 2016 with Cleveland. But I feel like he's proved over the last couple of years that he's able to manage some very good defensive teams. And he deserves a lot of respect for that. He was a way better coach than Doc Rivers was.
Yes.
And he just deserves, I feel like Tyron Liu deserves this respect.
I agree.
And he's at the point where I feel like people are starting to learn that. They're starting to learn that he's a very good X's and O's coach and that he's starting to really just mature into a really, really good coach. James, do you pretty much just agree with me?
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree.
So with that is the end of our episode of the For the Fans podcast. I would just like to say a couple things before we hang off. Number one is that we love having people on here, even if they are cameramen from time to time. Literally you can come on here and talk about anything from sports to Rubik's Cubes to Clippers playoff failures to, we might even try to have a Pokemon episode this year.
Really?
We might. Yeah, we might. It's probably going to get snapped, but we were thinking about it. But literally anything, Rubik's Cubes. Just 2K episode. 2K rebuilds with Patterson. Just like, oh my god. 2K is not realistic. I guess that's something else that I'll leave this out on.
No, it's not realistic.
But, yeah, no, 2K. Literally whatever you want to talk about. You want to talk about lifting weights? Like,
Yeah.
You can come on here, you can talk about anything.
You asked. I'm calling out Ryan to come on and talk about lifting weights. Ryan McCaskill's shocked.
With that, if you want to come on here and talk about it, it's the exact same thing. Our Instagram is FortheFansPodcast. If you want to come on here, all you have to do is there is a link in our Instagram highlights that you just have to go into, and you can click on that link. And that link will give you to a form in which you will be able to fill out and just address whenever you want to come on. And pretty much it's a couple basic questions about what you're passionate about and etc. and why you think you'd be a good fit to come on here. We would just like to say another thing, which is thank you for watching this. It's great to have the second season going.
Yeah.
And
the second season.
It's the beginning of the second season. So, yeah, I understand that I took a little bit of a break due to college and a little bit of laziness, to be honest. But
we're back.
We're back. That's probably the first big thing to say. But we're going to be putting stuff out now pretty much constantly. But I feel like it was a good idea to start this off with Clippers. So,
For the fans.
Yeah.
2022 is the year.
Yes, sir. And so we started this off. We're going to start this off with the Clippers because, it's a pretty, Clippers are interesting. So, all I got to say is, James, thank you for being on here.
Of course.
Go Clippers.
Go Clippers.
Go Clippers. Please don't blow another 3-1 lead.
Yeah.